Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is foster. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear foster used is to mean to encourage or promote the development of something. So, as an example, right, let's think about developing a good relationship, right? What are some things we could say or do that encourage the development of a good relationship or that promote the development of a good relationship, right? That's how you might see, that's one way I should say, you might see foster used. A second way to use the verb foster is to mean to develop an idea or a feeling in oneself. With this second definition, I think about the idea of creativity, right? There are different things teachers can do to develop creativity in their students, right? So there are different things they can do to foster creativity. That's an example of how you uh, how we could use that verb in that particular way. A third way you might hear foster used is to mean to bring up or raise a child that isn't one's own by birth. Okay? So we're talking about a special relationship where one or two people decide to raise a child that they did not give birth to. Okay? We'll look at some examples of that a little bit later. You should know that foster is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, all we need to do is add ing to form fostering. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding ed. Our base verb, foster, ends in a voiced R sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a D sound. Fostered, fostered. Okay. Now, I don't have any additional phrasal verbs for us to study today, so that will allow us to practice using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we're going to practice the past progressive, also known as the past continuous, and the simple future using will. Let's start with the past progressive. Sometimes your textbooks or other videos you might be watching, maybe your in-person ESL teachers might call this the past continuous. They mean the same thing. I like using past progressive because again, we have two P's and I like to remind my students that means I need two parts to make the verb. So to make an affirmative sentence in the past progressive, I am going to use a past form of be. And we know be has two past forms. It's was or were, right? So I, he, she, it was, or you, we, they were. And then we're going to use the ing form of the verb. It's pretty common to see the past progressive used to talk about an activity or an action that was in progress at some point in the past. Sometimes we'll see examples of where this action was interrupted by another action, and that interrupting action is usually in the simple past tense. Let's take a look at an affirmative example. The initiative, which invests in women led startups, was fostering greater diversity and equity in the workforce. Okay. I borrowed this sentence from a news report that was talking about a particular program or initiative. You can see that used there. Um, and describing kind of the effects, right? What did it develop here, right? More diverse, a more diverse workforce, a workforce with greater equity. Now, if I want to make a negative past progressive sentence, I'm going to insert not between my past form of be and my ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Older building designs weren't fostering socialization. So the architects aimed to change that. Okay. So again, we might think of that second definition, right, of promoting a particular idea or feeling, right? So the way an older building had been designed, people weren't socializing, they weren't talking, right? Now, I shouldn't say now. Other people saw that, right? These architects, and they made a decision. They're going to change it with a new design. Let's look at making a yes or no question now. To do this in the past progressive, we're going to start with the past form of be that matches our subject, and the subject comes next. Then we're going to use the ing form of the verb. Here's an example. Were they fostering the child when they decided to adopt? Now, sometimes these words get used interchangeably, foster and adopt. Legally, they're very different. The idea of fostering many times is that it's going to be shorter term, that someone is providing care for some shorter period of time, but they don't plan for that child to sort of become their own for the rest of that child's youth, or until they turn 18. Okay, so here we've got that interrupting action, that decision to adopt. And you can see decided is in the simple past tense. Now let's take a look at the simple future. We're going to use will, and the nice thing about will is our structure is going to be the same no matter what our subject is. So in the affirmative, we're going to use will, and then we're going to use the base verb. Here's an example. Boosting productivity will foster economic growth, more jobs, and higher wages. So maybe this is a statement a politician makes, or perhaps some sort of corporate boss, corporate leader. Again, with this idea of developing or promoting greater growth, more jobs, higher wages. Now, if you want to make a negative simple future sentence, we need to insert not between will and our base verb. An example here. These new laws and regulations will not foster fair treatment for all. They're not going to develop this kind of fairness. Finally, if we want to ask a yes or no question in the simple future, we're going to start with will, then we're going to have our subject, and then the base verb. Here's an example. Will settling the lawsuit foster healing? Right? So you can imagine kind of two sides being contentious in some kind of battle, right? Over whatever the subject of the lawsuit is. So the idea here, will resolving it, settling, stopping the lawsuit or the litigation lead to or develop some healing. Now let's continue to look at some words that are related to our verb foster. The first word we're going to look at is the adjective form of this word. So same spelling, same pronunciation. Our adjective form here is going to tie back to the third definition of a verb we discussed earlier. So the first way you could use this adjective is to denote someone that has a certain family connection through fostering rather than birth or some other kind of legal relationship. Let me give you an example of this. They have been foster parents for over 10 years. So they've had this special relationship with children with whom they did not give birth to. A second way we can use the adjective foster can involve or concern this idea of fostering a child. So, an example here, there are over 400,000 children in foster care in the US, right? So that is describing care. And I believe this is a semi-accurate statistic, one that can sometimes be hard to measure precisely because this relationship does tend to change. Another noun phrase here, foster home. You might hear that to refer to a household in which a child who has been orphaned or neglected, for some reason the parents just aren't able to provide care for this particular child, they are put in the care of someone else. So, an example here, the police are searching for a teen who ran away from his foster home. Now, I used foster care earlier, but I thought it would be good to also kind of define that just more broadly as a situation in which a child is living with another adult or adults, and these adults are not their parents. So could be other relatives sometimes. Other relatives could be kind of temporary guardians or foster parents, but many times it is not. An example here, the child was placed in foster care, right? So noting um, for whatever reason, and usually it's a very difficult matter, kind of a sad situation, that someone is just not able to provide the care that a child needs. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.